Now on BBC One, the late night news with Sophie Raworth.
Tributes to the former Pope Benedict XVI, who has died at the age of 95. He led the Catholic Church for almost 8 years until 2013, when he became the first pope for centuries to step down because of ailing health. President Zelensky promises that Ukraine will fight until victory as Russia fires another barrage of missiles at towns and cities across the country. Reaching the finish line, the man who has run a marathon every day this year to raise £1 million for charity. And celebrations start across the world to welcome in the new year. Good evening. World leaders have paid tribute to the former Pope Benedict XVI, who has died at the age of 95. He led the Roman Catholic Church for 8 years until 2013, when he became the first pope in 6 centuries to resign from the papacy. King Charles today praised his efforts to promote peace. Pope Francis said his predecessor was a kind man who was a gift to the Church. Our religion editor, Alim Makboul, looks back at his life.
Cerebral by character, Benedict was a prolific author and more at home with scholarship than pastoral work. He led the world's Catholics for 8 years and then abruptly resigned, the first pope to do so in 600 years. The passing of the man considered by hundreds of millions around the world to represent a direct link to Jesus was announced by his successor.
We are moved as we recall him as such a noble person, so kind, and we feel such gratitude in our hearts. Gratitude to God for having given him to the Church and to the world.
Joseph Ratzinger was born in southern Germany. He was just 6 when the Nazis swept into power. His parents were hostile to the regime, and though their son entered junior seminary in 1939, he was forced to join the Hitler Youth just 2 years later. He and his brother George were ordained on the same day in 1951. George became a parish priest. Joseph chose a quite different kind of ministry. First a doctorate, appointments at prestigious universities, and then the Vatican. As a cardinal, he upheld traditional Catholic teaching on abortion, contraception and homosexuality. He even spoke against rock music and the Harry Potter books. When John Paul II died in April 2005, he was one of the Church's longest-serving cardinals and presided over the funeral. After just 4 ballots, white smoke from the Sistine Chapel announced Cardinal Ratzinger's election. Habemus Papam, the oldest pope for 275 years. As Pope Benedict XVI, he sought to re-evangelize the West. It was an attempt to roll back the advance of secularism in Europe and North America. But in it lay an acknowledgement of the Church's declining influence in its traditional heartlands. Back in Rome, the Church was beginning to confront the scandal of sexual abuse by priests around the world. He was forced to deny that he'd played any role in covering up abuse, but the cases continued to mount. He later acknowledged he'd made mistakes in handling the matter. In February 2013, he shocked the world, announcing he would resign at the end of the month, citing age and failing health. The election of his successor, Pope Francis, represented a break with much of what Benedict had stood for.
He was probably one of the outstanding theologians of the 20th century. He was a great scholar, but he had this clarity of expression. So he was a philosopher, a thinker, and a European. Pope Francis is quite different. He's from Latin America. He brings a whole different resource to the life of the Church, one which pays more attention to what you might call popular movement. They're quite different and complementary in a way.
Pope Benedict upheld the creeds of the Church and taught them with conviction. He died as he lived, thinking and writing about how to defend and advance those creeds in an increasingly secular world.
Well, Alim is at the Vatican tonight, and Pope Benedict's funeral on Thursday will provide a moment of history.
Yes, Sophie, because we will see a sitting Pope presiding over the funeral of his predecessor. Highly unusual, but there's lots about this week that is unusual because lots of the rituals that you usually associate with a papal death already took place when Pope Benedict stepped down in 2013, like the closing of the papal apartment or the breaking of the ring he wore as Pope. But what we do know is that from Monday, Pope Benedict will lie in state for 3 days. We're expecting up to 30,000 people a day to file past on those days, and then on Thursday tens of thousands of people from around the world will descend on this square to pay their respects to a man who, whatever you think of what was a complex legacy, really was this incredible vessel of accrued knowledge and theology and lived experience that really went unrivaled in the Catholic world.
Alim, thank you. And there is a special programme about the life and death of Pope Benedict on Radio 4 tomorrow morning on Sunday with Edward Sturton, and that is at 7:10. Russia has launched another barrage of missiles at cities across Ukraine in the second big attack in 3 days. A number of explosions were heard in the centre of the capital, Kyiv. Tonight, in a New Year's address, President Zelensky said Ukraine will fight until victory. Hugo Bashego sent this report from Kyiv.
On New Year's Eve, Kyiv gets pounded. In the heart of the capital, a hotel is hit. Luckily, no one was here. In this residential district, more destruction. This video was filmed moments after the attack. Alyona was at home when it all happened.
Me and my husband were literally thrown into the corridor. We heard glass shattering and then there was an explosion, one after another. We came to the street and saw ambulances and casualties.
You can see the point of impact where debris from a missile that was intercepted fell from the sky. One person was killed there, a mother of two who was in the kitchen making dinner to celebrate the New Year.
President Zelensky accused Russia of deliberately targeting civilians.
Several waves of missile strikes on New Year's Eve. Missiles against the people. Those who did this are inhuman and they've lost.
In Russia, President Putin delivered his traditional New Year's address. This time, recorded in front of soldiers in uniform. He said troops were fighting to guarantee peace and security for Russia. But in Ukraine, after another day of attacks, people wonder when they will finally have peace and security. Hugo Mashega, BBC News, Kyiv.
2 men have been charged with the murder of 23-year-old Cody Fisher, who died at a nightclub in Birmingham on Boxing Day. Cammy Carpenter and Remy Gordon, both from Birmingham, will appear in court on Monday. 5 others arrested in connection with Mr. Fisher's death have been released on bail. A man has died and another has been injured following an avalanche on the north face of Ben Nevis. The Lochaber mountain rescue team and a helicopter were dispatched to help the 2 climbers yesterday afternoon. A 48-year-old man was pronounced dead at the scene and a 40-year-old was taken to hospital for treatment. 4 members of the England women's football team who won the European Championship this year are among those named in the New Year honours list. There's a knighthood for Queen guitarist Brian May, while the former Olympic heptathlete Denise Lewis becomes a dame. This report from Liza Mazimba contains flashing images.
Brian May, on top of the palace and now feeling on top of the world. The guitarist and animal welfare campaigner, knighted not just for services to music, but for his charity work too.
I do feel that this is not just a kind of reward or a gong, this is a kind of license, a kind of commission to carry on doing what I'm doing, and it gives me a bit more power to my elbow. So I'm very happy about that.
A fellow campaigner, Virginia McKenna, becomes a dame for her work with wildlife.
In football, and I've given a lot to my career in football, so I guess to be recognised for everything that I've done yeah, it's pretty special.
There's something as meaningful, as, I guess, iconic as an Olympic gold medal. I think it's about giving back, and so I have endeavoured to do that. And so I'm beside myself, I'm overwhelmed, I'm delighted and immensely proud.
Like most of those being honoured, Luena Hood isn't famous. She organised truckloads of supplies for people fleeing Ukraine and receives a British Empire Medal.
How does it feel to be honoured like this?
I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. And I think because we've had a bit of a gap and I'm able to look back and reminisce, it is incredible what you can do in such a short amount of time.
Just one of the many being recognised for making a difference to others. Lisa Mzimba, BBC News.
Arsenal have extended their lead at the top of the English Premier League with a 4-2 victory at Brighton. A man who vowed to complete a marathon every day this year to raise £1 million for charity has reached his finish line today. Gary McKee from Cumbria began his challenge last January, and he continued every day, running each marathon in around 4.5 hours. Howard Johnson reports.
He's run more than 9,500 miles. Often finished his daily 26.2-mile route before starting work and has gone through more than 20 pairs of trainers. Meet Cumbrian marathon man Gary McKee, speaking here to BBC Breakfast before he set off this morning for his 365th marathon.
A little bit nervous. It's not about the distance, it's just about, you know, it is the last one and I've got all these people out to support me, and it's incredible that everybody's came out and want to run on the last day.
But it went without a hitch, running the distance in just over 4 hours.
The streets were lined. You know, it was raining, but everybody was still out, and everybody's clapping and shouting. All the cars had stopped. We had the whole road, and it was fantastic coming up and seeing everybody there and being out. You know, it was something I'll always remember.
And all that effort was worth it. The father of 3 has hit his target of raising £1 million for cancer charities. His late father had suffered from the disease. Tomorrow, Gary will put up his feet for the first time in a year, but he's already indicated he's ready to run again to help those in need. Howard Johnson, BBC News.
Quite extraordinary. Not long now until midnight, but countries around the world have already begun celebrating the new year with some spectacular firework displays. This was Sydney in Australia, with the famous Harbour Bridge at the centre of festivities there. Hong Kong welcomed the new year with a multimedia light show over Victoria Harbour. Taiwan launched 2023 with light beams and lasers emanating from its landmark Taipei 101 building as the clock struck midnight. In Wuhan, in China, where the COVID pandemic started 3 years ago, people let off balloons to see in the new year amid a heavy security presence. And these are live shots of London, where crowds are being welcomed back to the capital's official New Year's Eve fireworks display for the first time since the pandemic, with around 100,000 ticket holders expected to watch along the Thames. Meanwhile, Edinburgh's gearing up for Hogmanay celebrations. Alexandra Mackenzie is there. How's it going?
Yes, we're at the Hogmanay Street Party in Edinburgh. It's going really well, the first in 3 years because of the pandemic, so everyone making up for that. We've got the castle behind me. There's going to be an amazing finale of fireworks there taking us into 2023. There's 10,000 people in Princes Street Gardens. Below me there, the Pet Shop Boys are due on soon. And behind me, we've got the famous Hogmanay Street Party here in Edinburgh. So yeah, I think these guys are having fun. It was an absolute sellout. People from around the world here. 30,000 people gathered here on Princes Street. It might be dreary here in Edinburgh tonight, but they're all here to see in 2023.
They are definitely going to have a good night, Alexandra. Thank you. And that is it from us. Have a happy new year wherever you are. We will see you next year. From all of us here at BBC News, good night.